Sangye Chirdan Soki Chognam La Jangcho Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chunyengi Pesonam Ki Drola Pinchir Sangye Drupa Shuk Sangye Chirdan Soki Chognam La Jangcho Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chunyengi Pesonam Ki Drola Pinchir Sangye Drupa Shuk Sangye Chirdan Soki Chognam La Jangcho Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chunyengi Pe Solam Ki Drola Pinchir Sangye Drupa Shuk.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Morning, everybody. So again, let's just start with a couple of minutes meditation on the breath. So think the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, I have to reach enlightenment myself. And without practicing the Bodhisattva path, there's no way to reach enlightenment. And without taking the Bodhisattva vows, there's no way to practice the Bodhisattva path. Therefore, in order to be able to practice the Bodhisattva path and reach enlightenment, for the sake of all sentient beings, I'm going to study the Bodhisattva vows. So like that, set bodhicitta motivation for this morning's session. So we're talking about the Bodhisattva vows, and as you know, there are 64 of them, 18 root downfalls and 46 secondary or branch vows. We started last week looking at the root vows, following this teaching on the Bodhisattva vows by Geshe Tashi Tsering, the former resident teacher of the Jamyang Center in London, and now the abbot of Serame Monastery in South India. So so far we've talked about the first 7 root vows: praising oneself and belittling others, not sharing with others one's wealth and Dharma, not forgiving even when others apologize, doubting and denying the doctrine of the Mahayana, taking offerings intended for the 3 jewels, abandoning the doctrine through sectarianism, and causing an ordained person to disrobe. So that last one was the subject of true confessions last week. Just moving on from that. You know, causing an ordained person to disrobe, it's really, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's actually the ordained person's fault. But still, you know, other people can become a condition for that. Okay, so the 8th is committing one of the 5 crimes of immediate retribution. I don't know, crime, but you know, negativities of immediate retribution. So these 5, or the 5 heinous crimes, or the 5 so-called inexpiable sins. Inexpiable. Of course, no sin is inexpiable. You know, as Lama Yeshe often said, there is no negativity that can't be purified using the triple negative. Or double negative, really. So what are these 5? Killing one's father, killing one's mother, killing an arhat, or someone who has attained liberation. I mean, that's an arhat, really. Making divisions in the Sangha community, causing a schism, and here it says causing harm to a Buddha's form, often given as drawing blood from a Buddha, you know, with malicious intent. I think some of you know the story of how I met Lama Yeshe, right?
I do.
Well, I was at a Copan course, stumbled into that in the third Kopan course in fall of 72. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche, as usual, was giving the teachings. And I think after about a week, we were in a break, and the Kopan Gompa, the temple had just been built earlier that year in the spring of 72, and it actually wasn't quite finished, but we did the course in there, about 50 of us, and there was 2 flights of steps leading into it, and sometimes in the breaks students would sit on the steps, one above the other, and pick lice out of the hair of the person below us. So, if you had lice, then you'd sit on the steps there and get somebody to pull them out of your hair. And, and what we do, and we drop them off the steps. I remember one time I got a louse out of somebody's hair and I dropped it there, and I watched, and it fell down and landed on a spider's web. The spider rushed out and grabbed the louse. So I felt really bad. I don't know if they survived anyway when you drop them down like that on the ground, but this one definitely didn't survive. So anyway, we were there one day, and the Canadian nun, Anila Ann McNeil, who was Rinpoche's assistant at the first few courses there, up to the 6th course. She led some meditations, and she was kind of the go-between between the students and the lamas and so forth. Anyway, she came up to me and said, "Oh, I heard you're a doctor." And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "Well, could you come and see Lama?" So I didn't really know what she meant, because at that point, we'd only seen Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we didn't even know there were any other lamas there. So I followed her down around the back of the property where there was this old house, which the lamas had originally moved into when they first went up to Kopan in about 69. And there was a big room in there where Lama used to give teachings on Sundays. Anyway, so she took me around to this back room and led me in. And there was this, sitting on the bed, there was this smiling monk, Lama Yeshe. And seemed that there was a glass top coffee table in front of his bed, and he bashed his shin and on the edge of the coffee table, and there was a cut which looked like it was just starting to get infected. And normally that wouldn't be such a big deal, but he'd had rheumatic fever as a child, and that had caused some damage to his couple of his heart valves, which is one of the complications of rheumatic fever. And in fact, he had he had quite an enlarged heart. It was in 72, and and the reason he died at 49 was because his heart finally gave up, and at that point, it almost filled his entire chest cavity, so huge. And because of the valve damage, it didn't pump efficiently. Despite cardiologists all over the world telling him he needed valve replacement, he wouldn't do it. And if you remember the teachings on the death process, as we're dying, all the winds, the wind energy from all the channels gradually kind of coalesces at the heart chakra, and then there's meditation that the lamas do to, at the clear light of death, with the clear light, experienced meditators can focus on the clear light. And that's the most sort of refined our mind gets during life. But for most of us, it just lasts for a moment, and then consciousness leaves the body. But yogis wait for that moment, because that's the moment with the mind, where the gross and the subtle negativities have dissolved, and the mind is at its kind of clearest. And if you can hold that mind, use that mind to meditate on emptiness, that gives you the best chance to realize emptiness. So we always surmised that Lama didn't want people cutting into his heart chakra and stuff, which would disturb that meditation at the time of death. Anyway, so he didn't have surgery. He died at 49. But if a person with rheumatic heart disease gets bacteria in their blood, like from a tooth procedure or from a cut or for other reasons, bacteria can lodge in the kind of crevices and the scars of the damaged heart. And then when the bacteria lodge there, then they start to multiply. And then you get what's called subacute bacterial endocarditis, where this infection, these bacteria then start sending off little blood clots and stuff through the bloodstream, and you can see there's these streaky kind of little hemorrhage things in people's fingernails and stuff. So it's quite a serious complication and causes further damage. So the thing is, you don't want that to happen, so you have to treat the infection as quickly as possible. So, brilliant diagnostician that I was, we sent down to Kathmandu for penicillin, and then you didn't need prescriptions or anything. You just had to go and give them the money, and they'd give you the penicillin. So then they came up with a bunch of procaine penicillin syringes. So they come up with the syringes and they're already loaded, and usually there's a course of 6. And so then I went to see Lama when these arrived to give him his first shot. And so he lay down on his bed and pulled up his monk's robe and exposed the holy buttock. And I swabbed it down and, jammed the needle in and started. And well, I actually rubbed the syringe, because usually this stuff is quite viscous. And if you warm it up a little bit, it allows it to flow more easily. So, I very professionally warmed up the syringe and then stuck it in. When I pushed down the plunger, what I'd forgotten to do was to make sure that the barrel of the syringe had been tightened into the top of the needle. Usually when they come from the manufacturer, it's not really tight. So you have to tighten it, but I forgot to do that. So when I pushed it down, it kind of popped out, and the needle was left sort of swinging in Lama's holy buttock, and penicillin went all over the wall. So, he looks around and says, "Maybe we try again tomorrow, dear." So I was really embarrassed. So so that was kind of my drawing blood from a Buddha, because when I pulled the needle out, there was a little blood. But I don't think it meets the definition of the 5 crimes of immediate retribution, because I didn't have malicious intent. Okay, that's my story. So drawing blood from a Buddha, or as Geshe-la said, causing harm to a Buddha's form. Well, actually, Geshe-la then goes on to say, perhaps there's no risk of us committing the 5th one, because at present, there are not too many Buddhas around that we can harm. Well, if you have a guru, that's a Buddha. So, you could beg to differ with Geshe-la there that, and, some people have 1 or 2 gurus, some have 10, 20, 30, depending on how long you've been around, how many teachings and what kind of teachings, initiations and ordinations you've taken. Because, anybody, anyway, if you want to know who's a guru, you need to read Lama Zopa Rinpoche's Heart of the Path. But, if you take an initiation from a Lama, it becomes a guru. If you take vows from a Lama, it becomes a guru. If you take teachings, really, it's you're supposed to regard that person as a guru. I think Chandrakirti or Aryadeva, one of them said, anybody who takes even 1 verse of teachings from a teacher and does not regard that person as a guru will be born 500 times as a dog. So there's some kind of saying like that. On the other hand, there are teachings that say, well, before you take someone as a guru, you should examine that person for 12 years and take a lot of teachings and try and really assess if this person is someone that you want to establish a guru-disciple relationship with. So somewhere between taking 1 verse of teachings and taking teachings for 12 years before you decide, I don't know if there's even a middle ground there, but, different teachings say different things. So I don't know. And I hadn't taken teachings from Lama Yeshe at that point, so I didn't even know if he was my guru then. But I think injecting penicillin into a Lama probably doesn't meet the qualification of that person being a guru. Or trying to inject penicillin. But there are many discussions about the 4th one, which is causing a schism in the monastic community. And, we have experience of that in the FPMT, but I'm not going to go into that now. Some scholars say committing an action which divides the Sangha members, so this is really talking about the monastic community, can only happen during a Buddha's time. Some texts say that for the negativity to be one of immediate retribution, one condition must be that there's the possibility of reconciliation, and that can only be brought about by the living Buddha. Therefore, if the Buddha is not around, this downfall cannot happen. It's possible to commit the first 2, killing one's own father or mother. These very heavy downfalls result in immediate retribution, which means that as soon as the person departs from this life, having committed one of these actions, or killing an arhat, they will definitely be born in the lower realms, most likely the hell realm. So the Tibetan for this is Tsa-me-nga. So nga means 5. Tsa-me means, without boundary. So it means that without another life intervening between this life and the life that results from doing one of these negativities, you will be born in the lower realms. So it's immediately after this life you're born, unless we purify them. So, as I just said, as Lama said, there's no negativity, including these 5, that can't be purified. But also in the teachings on the perfect human rebirth, one of the 10 richnesses is not having committed one of these 5 actions. So, and one of the consequences, apart from, the immediate retribution, the rebirth in the lower realms in your next life, which is probably going to happen anyway. One of the consequences having committed one of these 5 actions is you're disqualified from being ordained as a monk or nun. So if you've committed one of these 5, you can't get ordained. So that's another shortcoming. So anyway, obviously, committing one of these actions is breaking the 8th root bodhisattva vow. 9, holding perverted views. So I think Tibetan is logta, perverted view, often translated as wrong views. So, it's like the 10th non-virtuous actions, the 10 non-virtues, 3 of body, 4 of speech, 3 of mind. The last one of mind is wrong views, such as, there's no law of karma, there are no past and future lives, there's no 4 noble truths, things like that. So Geshe-la says the 9th one, holding perverted or wrong views, can be understood on many different levels. On a basic level, it can be the wrong view, thinking that the law of cause and effect does not work or is just religious superstition. It doesn't matter if we commit a virtuous activity. There won't be any result in the future if we hold these wrong views. If we believe that whatever we experience at this stage merely happens accidentally with no connection between these experiences and what we did in the past, this is a very basic wrong view, but it's quite a heavy one. Wrong view can be much subtler than that. We might feel that there is some relevance in cause and effect, but that the 12 links are wrong, or how we came into this existence is due to an accident or some biological function and nothing more. From the Buddhist perspective, this is a wrong view. More subtle still is the misunderstanding of interdependence or inherent existence. If you deny the emptiness of inherent existence, that's a wrong view and one of the 2 root downfalls that do not need the 4 factors to be complete. So remember, when we went through the preamble, there are 4 factors for to completely break one of these root vows, except for 2 of the vows, this one and the last one, 18, which is giving up bodhicitta. So you don't need the 4 factors. So it's like so remember when we talk about the 4 branches of an action that need to be, just this is talking regularly now, 4 branches of an action for an action to be complete and to have the power to become a precipitating karma or throwing karma, karma that determines a future rebirth. So at the end of this life, when the mind is about to leave the body, a throwing karma created in the past comes up, whether it was created in the last life or 1,000,000 lives ago, whichever is stronger, closer, more habitual, that karma comes up and throws us into the next life. So if it's negative, it throws us into the lower realms. If it's positive, it throws us into the upper realms. So for a karma to be complete, to be strong enough to become a throwing karma, the action that caused it has to be complete in these 4 actions, motivation, object, action, and completion. So anyway, you remember all that. So this 9th one, holding perverted views, doesn't need those 4 actions to become a complete break. So again, it's quite a heavy downfall. This might not seem as harmful as killing somebody, but from my understanding, Geshe-la is saying, it's more harmful because it's long-term. Taking somebody's life is committing one karma, one really heavy karma, but holding a wrong view, such as the law of cause and effect doesn't exist, really causes long-term harmful consequences, because you keep that wrong view life after life after life. And then all the negative actions done on the basis of holding the wrong view, become strong negative actions. Hey, Bill.
When we say there's no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, when we recite the Heart Sutra, are we in effect denying the existence of the Four Noble Truths?
No, that's the Heart Sutra is talking from the ultimate point of view. This is from a conventional point of view, all these teachings. So it's, and karma operates on the level of the conventional reality. So that's what all this, that's what this is talking about. The 10th one, destroying places such as towns. We might not destroy towns very often, like ever, but this vow has a wider meaning than that. It refers to causing, sometimes I wonder, if you destroy an ant's nest, I mean, that's the town of the ants, isn't it? Town, I don't know if, I guess it's talking about human towns, but if you destroy a wasp's nest or you destroy a beehive or something, that's those sentient beings' little town. So, not a very compassionate thing to do. It refers to causing an immense amount of suffering for large numbers of beings. Some commentators make the example of lighting a fire in the forest. Well, we saw it just happened in Colorado. If somebody set that fire, or set the fires that destroyed Paradise in California a few years ago, that'd be destroying a town. So it may not be that hard, actually, when you think about it. Well, of course, if you're the commander of an army and then you send the army in to destroy this village or this town, then that's, someone who does that is unlikely to have had taken bodhisattva vows, of course. But if you've taken bodhisattva vows and then you go, I don't know, maybe Genghis Khan, was he a Buddhist? If he had taken bodhisattva vows, he'd taken some initiations or something. I think there was Buddhism in Mongolia at his time. Then that'd be breaking this vow. Putting poison in the ocean will kill countless sentient beings. So yeah, it's not just human towns, according to this. This is the sort of thing this downfall is looking at. It seems unlikely this downfall will concern us, but we have to count it and remember it again and again. Firstly, it will help not to commit these actions in the short term. Secondly, it will leave an imprint in our mind which will prevent us from indulging in such attitudes, not only in this lifetime, but also in the next lifetime. Because, the karmic result similar to the cause. Bringing that kind of mind again and again leaves an imprint, which is an important way of developing spiritually. 11, teaching emptiness to the untrained. If we look at the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, when he reached the point of teaching the theory of selflessness or anatma, he was very, very sensitive. When asked if self exists, there were many occasions when he did not reply yes or no, but just stayed in silence. I think there are 14 questions that the Buddha answered with silence. I can't remember what they are. It came in the questions of King Milinda. There was a sutra. Like, after passing away, does the Buddha exist or not exist? Didn't answer. Anyway, so this is one of them. When asked if the self exists, there are many occasions in advised to say in silence. I'm not saying these things just from a Mahayana Buddhist point of view. If you read the Theravadan Pali text, you'll come across a section where there are 18 questions, I thought it was 14, which the Buddha never gave any answers to. And these are all connected with the topic of self, such as if the sense of self continues after death or whether self exists at all. He considered the best way to answer such questions and concluded it was very risky teaching this topic to anybody. If a person is not really ready to listen, saying self does not exist will cause strong distress, or it might cause great damage to their self-confidence. These ideas are so subtle that the person listening might easily decide that the Buddha was teaching that there's no self and that nothing exists. That's very, very dangerous. So that's, the extreme of nihilism. The teaching on emptiness is the only teaching which can really deal with the root of samsara. There's no other method to destroy the cause of cyclic existence. In a desert, a 1 liter bottle of water is your survival. Lose that and you're dead. Teaching on emptiness is that bottle of water. Of course, the teachings on compassion and bodhicitta are very, very powerful, but emptiness is the only teaching which can really deal with our fundamental ignorance. If we get it wrong, then there is no other solution. Teaching emptiness, therefore, is dangerous. If you want to discuss emptiness with someone, the first thing to decide is whether that person is ready or not. If they are not, it might cause many difficulties and great misunderstanding. The second thing to decide is whether you yourself are ready or not to teach. So we have to be careful. In the 6th chapter of Chandrakirti's commentary on Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, I think Wisdom just published Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on that. There are 6 lines that describe the person who is ready for a teaching on emptiness. That indicates how important it is to really find the right moment and the right person to teach this topic. The wrong shade of meaning and the student might feel it is nihilism, which will leave very bad imprints on their mind stream. Even when bodhisattvas entering into the path of accumulation start to realize emptiness, there is often great, great fear. When they start to realize emptiness, they're terrified that they themselves are somehow being extinguished. And if they become non-existent, their main aim to benefit sentient beings is being lost. So great caution is needed with the teaching of emptiness. So there's that story of Lama Tsongkhapa teaching emptiness to a bunch of monks. And, as he was teaching, that he had the monks meditate as they were meditating, one of the monks suddenly gasped and grabbed his lapel. And Lama Tsongkhapa said, see, Lobsang just found his eye on his lapel, his self on his lapel. So, and that's what they say, the first time we get a glimpse of emptiness, we can feel that we're becoming non-existent, and it causes, a lot of, our ego freaks out. Discouraging others from seeking full enlightenment. Okay, so these are things we're not supposed to do if we've taken these vows. This can easily occur to us in this life. Enlightenment is too far. It's an unrealistic goal. It's impossible, saying things like that. We can easily become discouraged ourselves, and we can easily carry that discouragement through to others. Of course, we must have realistic expectations. That's important in order to carry on our practices. But at the same time, we should not be discouraged and feel that we'll never attain enlightenment, nor make others feel that it's impossible. The Buddha himself recognized that there are different mental dispositions. Some people are not interested in attaining full enlightenment, but just want to attain liberation. But for people who have an interest in that path, it's important to support their interest and not to discourage them, because our Buddha nature can become active at any time. His Holiness has said that for him, just having some understanding that there'll be many, many lives is not discouraging, it's encouraging. This is not the only life I will have. I will have many lives, so I will try to attain full enlightenment, although at this stage it's very distant. It is a bit difficult for me to measure, but I will keep trying through all these lives. So, that should be our intention from now until we reach enlightenment. We'll never give up bodhicitta. And, always pray very strongly to meet in the next life and life after life, not just the Mahayana teaching, but the Mahayana Vajrayana teachings. We need to use this kind of logic to encourage ourselves and also to encourage others, particularly those who are interested in that path. Lama Tsongkhapa gives the example of a small action giving rise to vast merit, such as offering a cup of water to a person who needs it with the thought to attain full enlightenment. Like it says in the confession prayer with the 35 Buddhas, even offering a handful of food to an animal, these actions done with bodhicitta, even these small actions become a cause of enlightenment. These small but powerful practices build up. This is what is called the accumulation of merit. By really focusing on the main aim, the attainment of enlightenment, no matter how small the action is, it acquires vast merit. Sometimes it's very, very helpful to read those great masters talking about this in order to encourage ourselves. So there's that book, Wisdom, published many years ago by Jan Willis called Enlightened Beings. So that's a story of six of the six important lineage, Gelugpa lineage lamas, how they led their lives and how they reached enlightenment. So, at one point they were worse than us. They were ants and mosquitoes, but gradually, through attaining human rebirth and practicing Dharma properly, then gradually they attain enlightenment. So, fundamentally, we're not different from them. Just they practice harder and better than us, but we can still do it. 13, causing others to break the vows of individual liberation. So the 8th one, committing those 5 negativities of immediate retribution. The difference between the 8th downfall and this one is the object of the action. Sure. Anyway, I'll read what this says. The difference between the eighth downfall refers to ourselves breaking the individual liberation vows. So these are those 5. Whereas this one is about causing others to break them. This can be done by hang on a sec. Okay, so I'm thinking, why I'm pausing is because I got a bit mixed up. I'm thinking of the one of the branch vows. I thought it was one of the root vows. Shows how much I know, right? So the 11th branch vow is not committing, oneself, not committing one of the 7 non-virtues of body and speech to benefit others out of compassion. Or if you've taken the 5 pratimoksha vows, and it would be a benefit to break one of them. Well, Lama always used to give the example of lying, that, he said, Lama runs into your house, someone's trying to kill me, and I run into your house and hide. And then the person who's trying to kill me comes to the door and says, have you seen Lama Yeshe? And if you say, no, you're lying, but you're doing it out of compassion to save Lama's life and to stop that person creating a negative karma of killing. So if you don't lie in that, you're breaking a bodhisattva vow. So that's kind of why I got a bit confused. Anyway, this is causing others to break the vows. This can be done by disparaging the individual liberation vows, telling others that they're not as important as the bodhisattva vows and can be disregarded in order to keep the bodhisattva vows. This one is also about degree. The 8th downfall deals mainly with the 4 root vows, whereas this one refers to all of them. So the 8th downfall is not creating one of the 5 extreme negative actions. I don't quite see how that deals with the 4 root vows. Anybody? We need to think about that. I should look at some other commentary. Some of the individual liberation or monastic vows are very subtle. Our common sense may ask what they mean. There is a vow which says that if a monk beats somebody with a single straw, they're breaking a vow. How is this so? It's not really causing any pain. Here again, it's mind, isn't it? Although there's no pain, the action is accumulating that habit of violence. A straw, or isn't there an expression, beating somebody with a wet noodle? So even that shouldn't be done because you're accumulating the tendency to beat. So this vow is about respecting the vows of individual liberation. We need to see how important they are, and because of that, not encourage anybody in any way to break them. They are the base. Without them, the other vows are difficult to keep. Well, I think we all understand, that the fundamental practice in any school of Buddhism is practice of morality, or right conduct, and the essence of right conduct is keeping precepts, especially the basic precepts of these 5 lay vows. Not to kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct, not to lie, not to get intoxicated. So 14, belittling those who follow the path of individual liberation. It's very risky for Mahayana practitioners to think that the Mahayana teachings are the highest, the most complete or advanced teachings, and that the other teachings, such as those of the Theravada, are lower or incomplete. Without having such a feeling is really a very heavy negativity. I think we spoke last week. Abandoning Dharma is one of the heaviest negativities, especially for someone who's taken a bodhisattva vow. And disparaging any of the teachings of the Buddha, which really form just a complete whole, and at any stage in previous and future lives, we're going to need each and every one of those teachings at some point. And if we disparage any of them, we create an obstacle to meeting that teaching, perhaps when we need it the most. So Lama used to say, we sort of have some kind of pride, I'm a Mahayanist, I'm a Mahayanist. But if we really look at our mind, we're not even Hinayanists, that the goal of the Hinayana or individual vehicle, or whatever you want to call it, Theravada, so Lama used to explain that after Buddha passed away, the teachings that we call the Hinayana, or the lesser vehicle, the followers broke into 18 different schools. And the only one of those 18 schools that has survived to this day is what's called the Theravada, or the Doctrine of the Elders. So sometimes people who don't like the term Hinayana, they think it's pejorative, especially the practitioners of it. Sometimes it's called euphemistically the Theravada. But in Tibetan tradition of mental development, Geshe Dagi explained why the Mahayana is the great vehicle. There were 6 reasons. I can't remember them now. The goal is great. The object, all sentient beings, is great. The realization of emptiness is great. I'm not sure about that one. Anyway, I have to look it up. But Lama said that we're very proud of being Mahayanists, but if we look at our mind, we're not even Hinayanists, because the Hinayanists, they practice proper morality, they develop single-pointed concentration, they realize emptiness to attain liberation. They destroy their ego, they go beyond the reaches of karma. So the incredible accomplishments. So, we don't come even close to rising to that level. So it's ridiculous to feel proud, I'm a Mahayanist, and think we're superior to practitioners of the Theravada. So when the Buddha taught these different liberation vehicles, he did not teach that the individual liberation vehicle is the starting point, the Mahayana vehicle is the middle, and the Mahayana vehicle is the middle, and the Vajrayana is the completion. He taught according to people's different mental dispositions, and we must understand it in that context. No one system is better, higher, or more advanced than the others. Of course, in order to understand the teachings such as the Vajrayana, an understanding of the Bodhisattva teachings on emptiness and bodhicitta is needed, because there is a strong link between them and the entire Vajrayana, between them. And the entire Vajrayana practice is designed to make the Bodhisattva path quicker, it's important not to have a notion that some teachings are lower or inferior to others. So this, yes, I'm using the word Mahayana vehicle in the middle of Vajrayana. Lama Zopa Rinpoche often points out that the Mahayana is not a synonym for Paramitayana or Sutrayana, that the Mahayana has two divisions, the Paramitayana or Sutrayana and the Vajrayana or Tantrayana. So when we want to use the word Mahayana in that context, we need to specify, we can say it's Paramitayana or Vajrayana, we know what that means, but they're both Mahayana vehicles. So if you want to use the word Mahayana with it, you say Mahayana Sutra vehicle or Mahayana Tantra vehicle. Anyway, so if we belittle those who follow the path of the individual vehicle, then we're breaking this bodhisattva vow, the 14th one. 15, proclaiming false realizations, such as the realization of emptiness. So for fully ordained monks or nuns, one of the heaviest, it's actually one of the 4 root vows I mentioned last week, I think. For fully ordained monks or nuns, one of the heaviest of all the types of lying is proclaiming false realizations, such as clairvoyance or shine, calm abiding, or other common realizations when they have not. These realizations are called common because they are found among non-Buddhists as well as Buddhists. So Hindu sadhus or Hindu meditators could also develop clairvoyance or single-pointed concentration. So they're called common realizations. So proclaiming you have one of those when you have it, or realization of emptiness or otherwise, is breaking this vow. And for a fully ordained monk, is breaking the bodhisattva vows. And for fully ordained, for not just fully ordained, even for novice monks and nuns, these are the 4 root vows. Lying, and one of the 4 root vows, lying about one's spiritual attainments. To falsely claim such a thing for self-gain, power, name, fame, is considered a very heavy negativity, mainly because those who proclaim false accomplishments might become teachers and lead others. So there was one quite well-known Western teacher who claimed to have bodhicitta and a realization of emptiness. And of course, you can never tell what realization somebody else has, but a lot of people who might know kind of felt that was not a correct claim. There's that saying, isn't it? Those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. And that's one of the things, if we do have realizations, or we should really not tell anybody. We can tell our teacher, our guru, but we shouldn't tell others. And if we do start boasting about your accomplishments and realizations, it causes them to degenerate. So, so we have to be careful. I mean, totally irrelevant in my case, but for the future, we should remember this. And if we've taken a bodhisattva vow, of course, we have to keep that. Tibetans are not completely free from these things, but generally speaking, the great masters are very humble. They would not admit to having any realizations for fear of giving wrong information to other people. If a High Lama says that they have no realizations, then someone who the people know is lower. If a High Lama says that they have no realizations, then someone who the people know is lower cannot claim to have them. That is the kind of culture we Tibetans have. On the other hand, on one occasion, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that it's good to be humble, but if no one admitted to having realizations, there would be an entire population without them. Being truthful can also be helpful in some situations. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche tells a story about His Holiness that he kind of let slip in answering a student's question. So I think he said it was in Madison, when His Holiness was in Madison at Geshe Zopa's place. He was doing question and answer with some students, and he kind of let it slip that he had actually been one of the disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha in a previous life. There was something like that. So if it's true, you can say it, of course. But if it's not true and you say it, then that's kind of that'd be lying about. I mean, you have to have pretty clear mind to be able to remember that far back. And if you're just lying about it, then that'd be breaking this vow, proclaiming false realization. In the Wish-Fulfilling Golden Sun, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's lamrim textbook that we used in the early Kopan courses, at the front, where it says the author's name, it said, I think he had us put Thupten Zopa, not Lama Thupten Zopa or Thupten Zopa Rinpoche, just Thupten Zopa. And then the subtitle was the greatest simpleton amongst all the followers of Guru Shakyamuni. The greatest simpleton. I think we helped him come up with that word. But that's what he meant, And I remember and he'd always say, I have, look, and he's in one of his introductory lectures, the first or second, he'd always say, look, I have no understanding of the Dharma, not even an atom, but maybe the Dharma knows and understands me well. It's one of the things he said. So sometimes students, new students who hadn't heard this stuff before would say, well, why are we here listening to you if you don't know anything about it? And, it's like, well, I've heard a few teachings, so maybe I can repeat them like a parrot or like a tape recorder, but I don't really have a deep understanding. So, I mean, of course, it's not true, but, he would often say that, which would cause confusion amongst a lot of students who hadn't heard Tibetan Lama humility before. So, some of them I think are being sort of ultra careful not to break this vow, not to give people the impression that they have understanding or realizations. So remember I told you, one day I was walking with Lama Zopa Rinpoche at Kopan. I remember exactly where we were. And there was sort of a path. There was the Gompa there and there was a path, and his room was up there. And we were walking on this path. And, he was kind of famous for not sleeping. And it was said in his previous life that the last 20 years of his previous life, he'd passed beyond the need for sleep and just meditated 24 hours a day, and as the Laudo Lama. And so in this life, he was reputed not to sleep. And I never, for a long time, years and years, apart from one time he was very sick, I never even saw him lie down. When the Lamas first started going to Australia in the first few years in 74, 75, 76, maybe 77. They went to Melbourne and they stayed with my mother. And she was always marveled that the whole time they stayed there, that Rinpoche never got into bed. You know, the sheets and everything, when he left, they were exactly as she'd set up the bed, you know. So he'd just sit there, you know. And occasionally he might sort of doze off, you know, sort of lean back, but almost never uncrossed his legs, let alone lie down. And then there's this, in the Bodhisattva attitude, there's a section, or there's a quote from someone, from some previous Lama, a little aphorism, sort of give up stretching legs, is how Rinpoche translated it. Give up stretching legs. So, you know, never stick your legs out and lie down, always remain seated in meditation. I think it's kind of a metaphor for never stop practicing Dharma, you know, never relax and, you know, do something worldly while you have this perfect human rebirth. So anyway, so I was walking along with Rinpoche, and usually if you ask him this kind of question, he's going to make some sort of kind of sarcastic comment, or sort of not maliciously, but sort of put you down a little bit, you know, or make you feel silly for asking the question. So I asked him, Rinpoche, how is it that you don't need to sleep? And so I expected this kind of smart comment back. And he says, well, he didn't say realize. I think when he said, when you understand how meaningful the perfect human rebirth is, you don't find time for sleep like that. So, so he didn't say he'd realized the perfect human rebirth, which in the scheme of the lamrim would be a fairly minor realization. I mean, it comes right at the beginning. So realization of perfect human rebirth, to say that you'd realized it when you're a Lama wouldn't be such a startling revelation, you know, but even that they wouldn't say, you know. And he didn't say it, but he said, when you understand how meaningful it is, you know, how useful it is, how every moment can be made into a cause for enlightenment, then that's what you do instead of kicking back and stretching legs. So and at the fifth course, there were about 200 people there, and he kind of one point he kind of sat back and looked around at the whole, you know, crowd of 200 hippies and dropouts and assorted India, Nepal hangers-on, and he said, if one person in this time the courses were held in a tent in the back of the Gompa, because the Gompa, the temple that I mentioned at the beginning, was too small for 200 people. You know, even 100, 120 people was kind of tight. So, so for starting from the fifth course, we started putting up these big tents. There was a big area behind the Gompa. So he looked at this 200 people in the tent. He said, if in this life, one person in this tent realizes the perfect human rebirth, you know, he kind of shook his head. That will be like an amazing thing. So, you know, not to discourage anybody, but not easy to have lamrim realizations. You know, it needs a lot of study, a lot of meditation, and especially a lot of purification and creation of merit. You know, our minds have to be really fertile. And, you know, as the Lamas always say, if we put most of our effort into sort of tilling the field of our mind and fertilizing it and making it really kind of ready, then when we, as I say, when we meditate, the realizations will come like rain falling. So, you know, and then the first thing that Lama Yeshe had us do there at the beginning was a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat as the beginning of this, you know, lifetime of purification and creation of merit, you know, as well as, you know, study and meditation on the lamrim. But if we try to meditate on the lamrim without preparing our mind, it's like, you know, putting seeds on a glass table and expecting them to grow. Not going to happen. Being truthful can also help in some situations when talking about one's realizations. "16. Accepting gifts that have been misappropriated from the belongings of the 3 jewels. This is very similar to the 5th one, taking offerings intended for the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So I mentioned about the monk who went to sleep in the Gompa and someone came in and stole it, or there's someone who stole one offering bowl, one silver offering bowl off the altar at Tushita Mahayana Meditation Center in New Delhi. So that was the 5th one. Accepting gifts that have misappropriated from belonging to 3 jewels is breaking bodhisattva vow. The 5th one, so taking offering, the fifth one, taking offerings. The 5th one, however, is more about stealing offerings, whereas this one is more about misusing them, even though we might have permission to use them. So remember that Song Rinpoche was reluctant to take offerings. It was like accepting offerings is like drinking molten metal. It's easy for people in authority in monasteries or Dharma centers to take shortcuts and start using funds and gifts for their own purposes. Maybe not really stealing, but just to make life a bit easier for themselves. Well, that's a fine line. In a Dharma center, we're using center property that actually belongs to the 3 jewels all the time. So we really need to be mindful. So, you know, if stuff's offered like on the tea table, tea station, and that's offered, so no problem using that. But, you know, if you sneak into the Gompa and drink water out of one of the offering bowls, maybe that'd be breaking this vow. Plus you get a mouthful of saffron. Well, saffron's not cheap, so so busy trying to be funny, the water went down the wrong way. Okay. 17. Laying down harmful regulations and passing false judgment. So we finish with the 16th, accepting I would say that's knowingly accepting things. I mean, if you go to the center to visit Geshe-la in his room and you say, oh, I didn't bring anything. So you go into the Gompa and take a bunch of flowers out of the Gompa and then come up and offer to him, you know, and he accepts it, then that's not he's not at fault there because he didn't know, but you're at fault, of course. The first time I went to Laudo up in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's previous life place in Nepal in the high Himalayas, in 73, I spent the summer up there. A bunch of us did. That was the time that one of the incarnate lamas came in with bleeding from being beaten by Lama Pasang's mala on his back. I told that story. We had a little medical clinic up there. Before I came back down to Kathmandu for the 5th course, I decided to trek by myself to Tangboche. So, when you go to Laudo, you can walk from Kathmandu, it takes a couple of weeks, and the older monks used to do that, but the lamas and Westerners and the little boys used to fly, and you fly to a place called Lukla, where you did then. Now there's an airport. Well, I think it opened in 76 or 77, a place called Shangboche, which is just above Namche Bazaar, which is the main town in that area. And all the trekkers, pretty much all the trekkers, all these expeditions that go to Mount Everest go through Namche Bazaar. And a lot of the Kopan monks in those days came from Namche. The Sherpa monks. So you fly to Lukla, and then you walk. Can be done in one day, but often people would stay somewhere overnight. You go then from Lukla. You go to the most unbelievably beautiful walk. And the time of year, there's rhododendrons blooming everywhere. A lot of it's just alongside the Dutkosi, this river, and there are mani stones. People have carved mani pemihum in just about every rock face you can imagine, and it's just so beautiful. Quiet, it was then anyway, quiet, peaceful. And so then you go to Namche, and then from Namche, Laudo is a 3-hour, for most of us, a 3-hour walk, fairly flat. And then you get to the mountain where Laudo is, and you're down here, and Laudo is like 2,000 or 3,000 feet up the mountain. So that's a bit of a climb, but there's a fairly gradual path, so not that difficult. But if you go the other way, if you want to go to Everest, the base camp, then you go from Namche, then you go kind of northeast. So Laudo is pretty much due west, and Everest is northeast of Namche. And there's a big monastery on the way, a famous monastery called Tangboche. And there's a lama there. And so I wanted to go just do a trek to Tangboche before I went back to Kathmandu. So I set off, and as I was, it's, I don't know, maybe it's, I can't even remember now, 2 or 3 hour walk from Namche. It's not a hard trek or anything. And then when you get there, there's a bit of a hill to climb, not like up to Laudo, a few hundred feet or something, to Tangboche, to the monastery. And as I was going up this hill, I thought, oh my God, I haven't brought an offering for the Lama. And I was wearing a gold ring that had belonged to my father. And I'd had this is what, 73, he died in 58. And then I started wearing this ring maybe the next year or whatever. I was quite attached to it. So I'm walking up the hill, and then I'm looking at this ring. I think, oh, no way I can offer that. I mean, this is my father's ring, But then I thought, you're so attached to it, that'd be the perfect thing to offer. So I've got this debate going on in my mind. Don't be stupid, you just can't offer your father's ring. Don't be so attached to it, it's just a piece of gold, So eventually I got up there and then I was granted an audience. So I went into his room. He was in his room or in the Gompa, I can't remember. And I had a cutter. And so in a moment of madness, I pulled off this ring and I put it and I offered it to him. And he picked it up and he looked at it and he looked at me. He's like, are you sure you know what you're doing, And I don't know if he offered it back or I said, please, Rinpoche, accept the offering, So he did. So I never saw it again. But I think it might have been one time in my life I practiced Dharma, like threw dirt in the mouth of the 8 worldly Dharmas. I offered something I was actually attached to, Anyway, so that wasn't appropriated from the 3 jewels or anything. I don't even know why I told the story, but so the 16th Rude Bodhisattva vow, accepting gifts to be misappropriated belongs to 3 jewels. So being a fence is not a good occupation for a bodhisattva. 17, laying down harmful regulations and passing false judgment. As with the previous downfall, this one poses a greater risk for someone in authority at a Dharma center or monastery. If the 5th vow is stealing and the last one, misusing property, previous one, this one is to do with misusing the rules an organization has. Here we bend the rules or pass a false judgment to get our own way because we have the power to do so. So the Tibetan term for this has the sense of making bad rules, bad in terms of stopping opportunities for other people to have Dharma teachings or harming them in some way. It does not just have to apply to a large organization. This can also apply to in a shared house where we have to live with others, especially if someone, like the person whose name is on the lease, has some power and then starts to abuse it. We always have to be so careful with power. If we have some sort of authority or have followers, we're in danger. The power can so easily blind our wisdom, and then it becomes so difficult to make the right decision. For example, if a Dharma center is setting up a teaching program, someone in authority might vote against a particular teacher coming just because they have a personal grudge against them, because they personally dislike their teaching style, not because they think the teacher is inappropriate for the center. It's so important to go beyond self-interest where Dharma is concerned, because of the power of the object, the negativity is so much greater if we do not. Just say that again. It's so important to go beyond self-interest where Dharma is concerned. Because of the power of the object, the negativity is so much greater if we do not. If we do not go beyond self-interest. So the power of the object is the inherent Dharma power of a stupa or a bodhisattva or a realized being, like that. So, that's why I say that even creating negative karma with a bodhisattva, getting angry at a bodhisattva, for example, very heavy negative karma, but still it's better than not having met the bodhisattva at all, because of that contact, then at least we, create an imprint to meet Mahayana teachings and bodhisattvas again, even though we may have to suffer for a long time as a result of that anger. Power of the object. 18, last one. Giving up the pledge of altruistic aspiration. The last downfall is actually giving up bodhicitta. We so often start out with great enthusiasm when we first hear about bodhicitta. The idea of it, how it is so beneficial for others, how we can develop the mind and so on, all seems so inspiring. But when we start to face the reality of developing that mind, it is not that easy. Sometimes I still have a tinge of regret having offered that ring to Tengbo Lama, And when I notice that, I try to put it down. But anyway, the idea of bodhicitta, how it's so beneficial, how we can develop mind and so on, all seems so inspiring. But when we start to face the reality of developing that mind, it's not that easy. Quite often we're torn between working on our mind and the real world. The real world is not peaceful, calm, or sincere all the time. We find our wish to help others comes up against real obstacles, and it starts to seem too difficult. We hear about Chenrezi's ocean of tears over the suffering of sentient beings, but that emotion was a pure one. Our compassion, however, is mixed up with all sorts of other feelings that confuse us and obstruct our progress. The simple, pure wish to benefit others comes unstuck when we're faced with the difficulties of actually doing it. So mostly our compassion is towards, people who we like, to our family and our friends, and people we don't know, we're fairly indifferent towards, don't feel much compassion for them, even if they're suffering, or if there are people we really don't like, then when they're suffering, sometimes we can even rejoice, So, so to have, to maintain our affinity for bodhicitta can be difficult. If you read the sutras, there are many stories about people generating bodhicitta in front of a particular Buddha, but then having that bodhicitta deteriorate because they could not carry on the bodhisattva's activities. The stories may seem strange to us. For someone who has undergone such hard work to develop the mind of bodhicitta, accumulating so much merit, dedicating so much time, doing so much meditation, how could they give it up? Actually, giving up bodhicitta is not difficult at all. As soon as the thought that we can't do it clicks in our head, we lose it. No more than that, no less than that. If we see politicians we hate on TV, very easy to give up our bodhicitta. So we have to be really careful. If we think I can't do this for sentient beings, then that is the end of bodhicitta. It does not take a long time. So this vow is also, one that we don't need the 4 conditions. So then Geshe-la goes on to say, breaking a root vow. There are 4 factors needed to break a root vow. 1, not being mindful of the disadvantages. For 16 of the 18 root downfalls, there are 4 factors needed for it to be a complete downfall. The first one, so the 9th and the 18th are the ones that don't need that, wrong views and giving up bodhicitta. The first one, not being mindful of the disadvantages of breaking the vow, means having committed one of the downfalls and with no sense that it has been an unwholesome action. Say, for instance, that after we've praised ourselves, the first downfall, we realize it was an unwholesome thing to do. That is not a complete downfall. But if we do not see that, then with the other three factors, it's complete. So if we don't mitigate it by seeing it was a mistake to have praised ourselves and belittled others, then if we don't see that it's a mistake and then we commit the other three, then then we've completely broken that vow. So the first factor is not recognizing the disadvantages of committing the action. Second of the four factors, having no desire to stop the action. The second factor also translates as not reversing the desire to indulge in the infraction. This occurs when we're committing or have just committed a root downfall, such as praising ourselves, but there's nothing in our mind that wants to stop it. You know, we may feel justified, or even pleased, so that makes it worse. You know? The third of the four factors is indulging in the act with great pleasure and delight. The English translation of the third one is indulging the act with great pleasure and delight. The Tibetan translates more as happiness and satisfaction. So maybe I would say that while we're committing the action, there's a sense of pleasure and satisfaction. It feels good when we're doing it. If it feels good when we're doing it, then the third factor is there. So it's like, you know, kicking a person when they're down. Fourth, lacking any shame or conscience. So we've talked about this before in the early part of this teaching. The last factor is a lack of shame that had committed the action. In Tibetan, we have two terms that I've discussed earlier, ngotsamepa, shamelessness, and khelmepa, lack of consideration for others. This refers to both. So as the Buddha said, you know, monks, there are two things that keep the world on an even keel. What two are these? The shame and fear of blame. So shame is what you feel to yourself, you know, when committing negative actions in the bathroom when no one can see you, or fear of blame is when you commit them openly where others can see you, but, you know, you don't do it because you feel others will criticize you, or, you know, you'll bring the Dharma or Sangha into disrepute. Anyway, we talked about those before. So this refers to both, lacking any shame or conscience. These four are needed for all four, but two of the root downfalls to be complete. They're very important to know in case we break some of the vows. With one or more of these factors missing, it's still an infringement, but it will be a bit lighter. If they are there, if they're all there, then the consequences are quite heavy. If, on the other hand, after committing a downfall, by regretting having done it, by seeing the disadvantages of it and not gaining satisfaction and pleasure from it, we can immediately make the result lighter. So in the second part, the two root downfalls that do not need all four factors. There are two root downfalls, however, that do not need all the four factors to be complete. Simply doing the action makes it a complete action. These two are the 9th, holding perverted views, and the 18th, giving up the pledge of giving up bodhicitta. All we need is to simply have that mind, and we've completely broken the vow. If in our mind the law of cause and effect makes no sense at all, then that is a complete wrong view. as we've seen, the ninth downfall, holding perverted views, is very powerful in terms of destroying lots of our virtue. The very fact of that mind occurring, such as saying the law of cause and effect does not exist, means that we're breaking the bodhisattva vows without all four factors being present. In the same way, giving up bodhicitta is a wrong view. But be careful here. That does not mean that if you are not a bodhisattva, you're breaking the vow. As we looked at in the 12th root downfall, discouraging others from seeking full enlightenment, it's easy to feel attaining the mind of bodhicitta is impossible. When we hear about the bodhisattva's deeds, they seem like something we could never do, no matter how many lifetimes we work towards them. If someone kicks us maliciously, how can we be patient? If someone treats us really badly, how can we stop from losing our temper? Reading about the bodhisattva's deed or the 6th chapter of Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara gives us inspiration and prevents us from becoming discouraged. Of course, we cannot do such things now, but there will come a time when we will be able to. It's so important to have a positive attitude towards our practice. So giving up bodhicitta is not about being unable to act like a bodhisattva. As long as that wish to help others is strong in our mind, that is not breaking the root downfall. So, those are the 18 root bodhisattva vows and a little commentary on them. So, if we've taken these vows, it's important that we read them again and again and remember them in our daily life. All right. As I said, I should do that much more myself than I do. So I think it's all we have time for today. I do want to get back to the text. So we'll look at the secondary downfalls because, in these, there's so many teachings in these vows. It's really a very rich compilation of Dharma teachings. So even though it's taking a little time, I think it's worth going through. So we'll definitely finish these next week, and then get back to this text. So that hopefully we can finish it in the next maybe month or so. Okay, sorry, anyway, I don't leave time for questions, but if you do have any, you can bring them next week, or you can email me if you have any questions, and I'll see if I can answer. So I think that's it. Thank you very much. We started with bodhicitta. We've been discussing the bodhisattva vows. So, we've definitely created, a huge heap of merit, as they say. So before we have a chance to destroy it through wrong views or getting angry and so forth, then we dedicate it. So think, because of this merit that we've just created, may I quickly become a Buddha in order to enlighten all sentient beings. We need a lot of merit to become enlightened. So we put we put the merit we just created towards our collection of merit, accumulation of merit, to become enlightened, so that we can enlighten other sentient beings. So that's the spirit of these dedication prayers. Thanks, Bob.
Saji perki juksing me tok tram re rab ling jin ni de gen pa de sange jing du ming te uwa gi dro kom nam da jing la chur par shu je ton la me kut se rab ten jing nam ka trin le chok chur ge pa dang lo sang ten pedrin me sa sum gi dro e mun sel tak tu ne gyur ching yedam guru rat nam mandalakam niryatayami. In that snow mountain encircled land, source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig remain in life till samsara's end. Savior, the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who extensively clarifies the path that unifies emptiness and compassion. To the lotus in the hand, Lord Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech me, all your holy wishes be fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's mortal way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Through this virtue may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha's state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may our unborn arise and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. Mig made se we ter chen chen resi remake in pe wang po jong tel yang gang chen ke pe su gen song ka pa lo song dog pe ja bla so wa de. Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Nick.
Appreciate it.
Thank
See
you,
you next
Nick.
week.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.